Zobe Sanje Rinpoche Shabsunde, Devare Shevanji Denke Maji Wande Vekalojo, Lana Meva Lada Menanje Demba Sanje Chumden, Bejawa Shajan Tobana Shasen or Chudu Jabsuja, Demba Jumden and the Shevan Rajumaya, Zobe Sanje Rinpoche Shabsun Demba Dereshu, Jidin Jemba Jiwunde Vekalojo Lana, Tada Menanje Demba Sanje Chumden Bejo. Shaja Tuba La Chasen or Chuda Jasuja, Demba Jumden de Shen Shavan Jajumba Yana, Zobe Sanje Rivada Shazun Demba Devoreship, Jinin Jamba Juvun de Vakano Javanama, Tada Melanje Demba Sanje Jumden de Bejo, Shaja Tuba La Chasen or Chuda Jasuja, Kanze Ganya Zovo Jadon Sajen Dena Comband, Nani Jinin de La Jojo Teze Keba Jamasa. Nanda Gunga Jodo Sosa, Geshe Jasu Sergio, Chaban Jidensum Lame Bangombo Chonye Jana Chazen, Senjon de Martimen Davish, Sendor Nava Jana Chazen, the Regina Seva Soma, Yame Chenchen Jana Chazen, Gombo Tuji Jedan Batum Jechebe, Solomon Yedin, the Shinjana Chazen, Taben de Jati, giving as one that you Jida Tanum Chajo, Shinjana. Chene Treva Lanyan, the Lava Tamaran, the Shinga Tamayan, Ginu Laya Chazen, the Wachian Bejan, Gavakusun Sowas, Rangazen Yonzo, the Tenda Sanja Tamaya, Kamara Rimaman, Guman Kamara Rimaman, the Gumasa Vachu, Melon Lodan, the Jechan, the Trata, Solomon de Yatom Jessica, Gobantum, the Kenyan, Gada Nadan Shiva of the Sivason and Wandre Show.
To the teacher, the blessed one, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata know of the word, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the shattered land, I prostrate, make offerings and call for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one born beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata know of the word, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the shattered land, I prostrate, make offerings and call for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one born beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, know of the word, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the shattered land, I prostrate, make offerings, and call for refuge. When the supreme among humans, your holy discerned, you paced out 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise then I prostrate. With the pure bodies born, supremely pure, wisdom ocean like golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 words, winner of the best, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, the 3 words are not, incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior in great compassion, teacher in all understanding, the field of merit with the qualities like a vast ocean, to you the one born to darkness I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtues which frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to the Dharma which pacifies I prostrate. Those who are liberated and also show the path to liberation, the holy being qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you the sublime community intending virtue I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions, subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha.
star mirage, a planet, an illusion, drop of dew or bubble, a dream of flesh, lightning or cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through these merits, may sentient beings attain miracle of all seeing, subdue the flow of thoughts, and be delivered from motion of suffering, of aging, sickness, and death. Sanje Jana Zoje Jana Ma, Chanjupa to Dane Jazu, Nagi Jesoje Besonaji, and Rola Benji Sanje Rubush. Sanje Jana Zoje Jana Ma, Chanjupa to Dane Jazu, Nagi Jesoje Besonaji, and Rola Benji Sanje Rubush. Sanje Jana Zoje Jana Ma, Chanjupa to Dane Jazu, Nagi Jesoje Besonaji, and Rola Benji Sanje Rubush. Sanje Jana Zoje Jana Ma, Chanjupa to Dane Jazu, Nagi Jesoje Besonaji, and Rola Benji Sanje Rubush.
I go for refuge and am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge and am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Manzima Zimmer, Manzima Zimmer, Ten, Manzima Zimmer, Kanga Torn, not the children, not on the Vineyard, Yavan Bagage, the Zip and the Javase, later you must have a thorough letter you want to the Junior German, Tomani, Dawashi Yadaji, Damage, Sanjan, Damega Message, Javachawa, Simji Juyan, Majaba, Chuni and the Song Tamja Yanda 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 Mayini, Yanda Mimi Yanda, Tennyson Jedibo. Shane Shimishiva, Jovanum German, London Beden Tadem, Tennyson Jedibo. Kala de Nagarjuna, Tenere Shitty, Tele Shema, Tijishim Damani, Sanjin Jidem, Temba Duzu, Tunjimani, Tadem, Shavamani, Rosanjana Majoshi, Yendena, the Seven, Razanji Shin, Temba Meda. 다른 주요하다고 제조바로 되지만 저게 뭐 관계 얘기는 주고 수대 얘기는 주고 된지 주고 수만 도한테만 차지하고 So last Wednesday, we discussed on the about the stanzas number 10. Stanzas number 10. So it's kind of saying that when you read the stanzas, the root text is saying that when one discerns with the precise intuition, what occurs, the condition by the misknowledge. One does not experience anything, whether created or ceased. So in another translations, which is saying that when the perfect gnosis ceases, perfect wisdom ceases, that things comes from ignorance as the conditions. So now this first line is saying that, it's relatively, you can talk about, out of ignorance, there's the karma and consciousness, name and form, contact, the faculty, the contact, feeling, craving, grasping, whole, the chain of 12 links of different originations,
relatively exist. So this is what, when this one, through objective, through the objective, perceptions or through objectivities, if you try to see things objectively, nothing you can see. There is ignorance as a cause. There is the karma and consciousness coming from or originate from, emergence from the ignorance. And more importantly, from the point of view of the wisdoms, there is no such thing as arising. There is no such thing as a kind of destructions. So there's nothing has born, nothing is dying. So this may people, this may create some kind of impression that, oh, this means, wisdom realizing emptiness and conventional knowledge is seeing something totally opposite. So conventional knowledge, through the with the conventional knowledge, yes, there is ignorance and karma and consciousness and a whole chain of 12 linked to dependent originations there. When this, through, if you try to see through the wisdom realizing emptiness, from that point of view, from the emptiness, there is no such thing arising. There is no such thing destructions. There's nothing born, nothing dies. So now this kind of saying that, is the kind of exactly the same point. These are not two opposite things. These two are not two opposite truths. Because the arising and the distractions of the birth and the death, and objectively not exist. There is no such thing as the birth, and objectively or by itself. There is no death that exists by itself. It is conceptually, constructed, or through the language is, create the idea of the birth and the death. So again, this is not say, through the language is to be created, the idea, the concept of the birth and the death is exist. So idea of the birth and exist is not theoretically or hypothetically, hypothesize. It's not talking about hypothesis. It is not talking about mental projections. So it is saying that so you can see, like for example, when there's the barley seed, by preceding the barley seed, there is the barley sprout. There's the barley sprout. So this kind of, from the relations of the barley seed, from the barley seed and the barley sprout, from the relations, and conceptually, through the language, we can construct something is, going to be born, or something is going to arise, and whatever things that arises, and that is going to cease to exist. So the arising is, from the direct experience of, as a first person, you experience
by planting the seed and sprout manifest. So, from there, from the language it says, yes, there is a rising. There is the arising, and so once it arisen, once it arisens, it kind of continues for a while, and then it ceases to exist. When it ceases to exist, that what had been living is no longer existing at the time of the death. So relatively, this is the death. So that death is with relation to what has died. What has died with relation to that's died. That is the death. Now that death is it is not going to prove, what has been living is discontinued. It is not going to prove the discontinuing. So for example, today is the Friday. The Friday will cease to exist in midnight and 12 o'clock. So the death of the Friday is happened at the time. That death of the Friday is, and what has died, what has ceased to exist? Friday, the Friday ceased to exist. So the Friday ceased to exist because it's no longer Friday at the time. So that is in midnight is no longer Friday. So therefore the Friday has ceased to exist. So now saying when the Friday, the moment, the midnight, when the Friday ceased to exist, is there nothing that continues from Friday? And we say, yes, the Saturday happened. They continue from the Saturday. So if there is something continue from the Friday, why Friday is discontinued? Why Friday has turned into nothingness? So the Friday hasn't been turned into nothingness, right? Nothingness. If there is nothingness, then what is the meaning what is the meaning of death or the cessation of the Friday? So Friday is no longer present at the time. That's the reason. Friday is not present at the moment. Therefore, the Friday has ceased to exist. Friday has died at the time. Still we say because of the Saturday, they continue in the Friday. Therefore, Friday did not dissipate it, did not discontinue it. So that the cessation of the Friday in midnight is, it is not objectively end of the Friday. Right? So when the milk turned into yogurt, during the yogurt, milk did not dissipate it, milk did not discontinue, the milk did not turn into nothingness. But milk is not at the time, it's present. So that is relatively, it is the death. But it is not turned into nothingness. It hasn't turned into nothingness. So there is no such thing as death, objectively. I think this kind of saying that, from this, there's some kind of redefining your idea of the death and the birth, as redefining. Because previously, the birth and the death is something, like almost like day and night, like apple and orange. So when you closely look, the birth and death is not like day and night. So we say, the moment we say, when someone died, if someone believe in next lives, he died now, I hope he has born somewhere, human being or the God being, or something like. So if you're hoping the one who has died has born somewhere, So the meaning, the definition of your death is not the nothingness, not the end. And also believe that, sometimes people think that, oh, yeah, there is no next life. There's no next lives. What is going to turn into something from the ashes? So you can do the experiment. The wheat that burns in your yard, you can just dry it up by fire, and see what happened next month. If there's a rain, again comes back. So if the wheat can come back, I think you're a little bit better than wheat. So you may come back again. The grass has next life. How come you don't have next life? So that's why I'm saying that, so there's the definitions, whole our own, the interpretations of the birth and the death is not really, it's not fit in the reality, in the exact reality. So that's what I'm saying, through this analyze, there's some kind of redefining the meaning of birth and the death. So that birth means something happened newly, that never exists prior to that. Right? So that is the birth, So, so I think that's, and then because of something precede, by preceding something, and something happened right after that. By having, preceding the barley seed and the barley sprout happen. So we say, oh, barley sprout has born from the barley seed. So then, when we think of that, when you try to imagine, put in the picture in your mind, if you picture that the barley sprout has moved from the barley seed, that is the wrong picture. Barley sprout never exists during the barley seed. If you, picture the meaning of barley sprout born from barley seed, if you picture that in your mind that, barley sprout has moved from or transferred from the barley seed to the sprout, that is the wrong pictures. So, and then it's not going to call birth. It is already existing and then re-existing. Something pre-exists within the barley seed, now it is manifesting or re-existing or reappears. So, so this is how we picture arise. Arise is something came from, something that is something that has, coming from the barley seed, So that is the, in Sanskrit, it's the word it says, the vastu or a thing. So what a thing? So the barley sprout is a thing that come from, having come from the barley seed as a thing. And that barley seed, when it ceases to exist, it is, lost its identity, or it disappears at the presence of the barley sprout. That is the cessation or the death of the barley seed, right? So, and again, that death is again become a thing. So death is a thing, and the birth is a thing. So the thing means to you, in conventionally, it seems it has its own identity. It's something that is identified, by itself. Something out there is outside of your mind. So that is called thing. So when any kind of thing that appears to the mind, there's always, it appears as an intrinsic property. Thing appears to the mind as intrinsic property. So that kind of, this saying that this is because the arising is a thing, that disintegration is a thing. So when any of those things appear to the mind with intrinsic property, with something independent phenomena, or so that kind of thing will disappear when you meditate in emptiness. From the point of view of the emptiness, there is no such thing as arising, such thing as death. So this is, and why? Because the arising is a thing. If you objectively analyze, so where is that arising? What has arise? What has arise? There is no physical thing to define this is the one that arises. Because a reason one is not arising, unarisen is not arising, and what arising other than that? Arisen and unarisen, right? So this is why objectively no arising, but your mind, with your language in mind, interpret it, because I have planned to see this happen, so therefore, when you planned, there's the arising, there's something coming. So that is through the language is projected or fabricated, constructed as a thing. So therefore, when you meditate in emptiness, you don't see that. The projections, mental creations is no longer there when you see things objectively, because that is subjectively you constructed. So this is what's saying that, when one discerns with precise intuitions, one does not experience anything that arising and destructions. Right.
So they say,
yeah.
Yes, when we realize emptiness, the object doesn't disappear. Or disappear, it is the belief that it has independence, that it has intrinsic nature. Yes, no?
Yes. That disappears, and then with what that with what your mind is seeing independent or intrinsic property, and then says that is the picture of a thing, the thing of arising, thing of the destructions. So that as a thing of the destruction and arising, so as an ordinary, someone who has not yet realized emptiness, for them it is, substantial. It is a real thing.
Solid.
The one who has, attained nirvana, the person who has attained nirvana, they stop seeing that it has some kind of property of existing. But they know there is no such thing as a property, there's no such thing as an object, but I can construct the thing through the language and, in the conceptualizations. So for us, for ordinary people who do not, who hasn't been realized emptiness, so when we create the object, when we create any kind of thing, when you give a name of a thing, that very is, for us, is intrinsic property. Because your mind, when you study, when you analyze, arising is a thing, but arising is no longer found with something that is already arisen. Arising is not found with unarisen thing, and other than arisen and unarisen, there is no such basis for arising. So, this, logically, you could not figure out what is the arising as a thing. So logically, there is no any picture of the but when you're not analyzing, yes, that thing comes back. It has its own property. It has own essence. So this is why it's saying that things do not, arising in the distractions as a thing, do not see through wisdom that is meditating in emptiness, or from the point of view of the emptiness. There is no such a thing as arising in the distractions. So that is not going to destroy the concept of arising in distractions. It's not going to destroy it, because the concept of arising in distraction is relatively, conventionally. So wisdom realizing emptiness, or the ultimate truth, is not against the conventional reality. So
that is very important, because that is why now I'm thinking why I so many times fall into nihilism. It is because that misunderstanding, thinking realization of emptiness, in the realization of emptiness, all the conventional world is going to dissolve, like in nothing. I'm falling in nihilism, but now I understand what you are saying. It is not that this conventional world disappear. What disappear, it is the appearance of intrinsic nature.
Intrinsic.
But you are in the world. You don't. Yeah.
So otherwise, otherwise, when you attain arhat, you have to destroy everything. Tables, cups, everything that you see, just this does not exist. This not exist.
Everything is gone.
Everything is gone. So,
even the floor, you are flying.
So I think that kind of so I think that also kind of the pointing out that because of the emptiness, because of the absence of intrinsic property, therefore anything you can construct. So the constructions is got allowance. It is allowed because things are absence of intrinsic existence. If things are intrinsically exist, you are not allowed to create anything. You have to go with what is the intrinsic property. So, for example, if there is the arising as a thing that is intrinsically exist, then you cannot say, the barley sprout, arising of the barley sprout, the arising, arising of the barley sprout is arise from the barley seed. because it is not from, because arising of the body sprout means there is some kind of sprout, before it is physically manifest. It was already coming from the body seed. So which means, when the body seed, when the movement of the body seed exists, the sprout is already there, floating over the body seed. So the body sprout is already there with the body seed. Now it is, transferred from the body seed to the body sprout, from the causal time to the resultant time. So then you cannot say it is born from the body seed. It was already there during the body seed. So, so this is kind of, it is logically, because there is the idea of something that arises from the body seed is the creation. It is the creation, the mental creation, and it is allowed to create because the body arising of the body sprout is absent during the causal time and during the resultant time. Then you can create this. And also sometimes you'd say, the color, sound, smell, taste, textures. So color is exist. And so how do you see the color? The consciousness experience the color because the consciousness is, like consciousness is seeing something through, the mass collections of the atoms in the body, and the contact with outer the mass collection of the atoms. So if the consciousness seeing through one atoms, and there is no color, color is non-existing, smell is not existing, sound is non-existing in atoms. So that when the consciousness see things through the mass collection of the atom, so the consciousness and the element or the the collection of the atoms, conjured, some kind of color or the smell or taste and textures. So this is why it's saying there is no any intrinsic property in the color, no intrinsic property in sound and smell and taste and textures. So this is why the number 10, when the perfect, gnosis sees that things comes from, things here is consciousness, name and form, karma, and all of them coming from ignorance as a condition. So this is generally, relatively, you can, conceive, you can picture whole dwellings and some dwellings and dependent originations. Also you can picture the samsara and nirvana, conventionally, but objectively when you try to see it, there is no nirvana, that is, substantially different from the samsara. There is no samsara that different from the nirvana. So however the things comes to, nothing will then be objectified either in terms of arising or the destructions. So that's the yesterday. You know. So number 11, in 15th Geneva translation says, this is the transcendence of the suffering, the transcendence of sorrow. In this very life, one's task is complete if after the knowledge of the truth. Differentiation occurs here. So in this text says, that is the immediate nirvana, and that very thing is attaining the goal. If after insight into the truth, one discover particular here. So when I read the Tibetan, it says, so in the Sanskrit and the Tibetan, many times they use dharma. So phenomena as dharma, the cessation as a dharma, the virtues, activities as a dharma. So tong and che here is dharma. So dharma is some kind of, if you really kind of it's kind of entity, it's a kind of entity of the identity. Identity is the dharma because it identified, something is good or bad, heat or cold, something that is defined, something identifiable, something that definable is the dharma. And then say, why do you call the virtues, the actions is dharma? Because it also defined individual or keep individual from doing negative things. Therefore, it is dharma. And why do you call nirvana as dharma? Because nirvana is that keep the individual from falling into second existence. So that's why it's dharma. Because in the English, when they translate, they have no one name, because each one they says first, is dharma is referring to emptiness. There's a truth. They translate in truth, and this dharma is the it is referring to cessation of the suffering, and this is nirvana in translate. So nirvana of the liberations.
Just like it is translated as nirvana because it keeps the individual from falling into nihilism or lower realm.
Which one?
The dharma is translated as nirvana.
Like for example here, the color is dharma, because it is identified as a single unit from smell and taste and textures. Something that defined from defined or identified separate from some other things. So it's a dharma. So dharma is holding. So that is one of the dharma. In that, with that definition, in everything is dharma. And the second, the dharma is says, I'm practicing dharma. My dharma's practice, my dharma activities. Now that means that activity that is keep you from engaging in negativities, restrain from engaging in negative actions. That is also dharma. So then we say, I go for refuge to the dharma. That cessation, the end of the afflictive emotion, end of the cause of suffering, is also dharma, because that end of the cause of suffering keep individual from the cyclic existence, from samsara. So that's why, so, several times I mentioned that, when the Shariputra, the first time he heard Buddha's teaching, that is, this one in the Pali traditions, and in the Pali language, says that Shariputra, first time he heard, when he sees one of the Buddha's disciple, Ashita, Arhat, one of the Arhat. Shariputra was very kind of fascinated by the individual's, presence, and he asked, what kind of, knowledge you gain? You look different. You look very. You have the, very pleasant present in the present. And then, who is your guru? So that Arhat, told Shariputra. So I'm kind of, new as a follower of the Shakyamuni, but I can tell you one of the teaching, the line that Buddha has, often mentioned. In this, in the Pali language, means there's a different accents in the Sanskrit. So ye dhamma, dhamma, like this. In Sanskrit, there's a dharma. In the Pali language, dhamma, ye dhamma, hetu parbhava, tishan the tathagato. In the Pali accent, tisan tathagato. So it means everything is moving due to the cosmic conditions. And that teaching is taught by Tathagata. And then Teshancha Nirodhas, Nirodha means to end something, so whatever, everything is moving means positive, negative, anything that is moving, happening is due to cosmic condition, And also the Mahashamanas, the great, Shakyamunis, Samadhi meditator, the sage has mentioned also how to end certain cosmic conditions which brings the suffering. So when this line was heard by first time Shariputra, and he was kind of, in a very shortly, he gained some kind of deep understanding from this line. So immediately, so he kind of shared with Mongolputra. So Mongolputra, and they all, both of them, has very moved by this line, and then went to the Buddha. And the Pali traditions in the text mentioned that Mongolputra first attained nirvanas within 7 days. Shariputra takes 15 days to attain nirvana. So they both attain nirvana, So with the Shakyamuni attain enlightenment takes 6 years. so you see who's smarter now. So anyway, in this Yedama means all phenomena is named by Dharma. Yedama is something that is identifiable, something that is identified in single unit as Yedharmas. So these are changing, moving, changing due to the cosmic condition. And therefore, by ending certain cosmic conditions, you can also stop certain effect that is emerge from the cosmic condition. So, why they moved by this line because they have been studying, from the Guru, because everything is from the God. The Creator is deciding everything. If something is happening because of one single cause as a Creator. So now Shakyamuni, Buddha is saying that everything moving, changing due to their cosmic conditions. It's not by one individual decisions. It's not happening by one individual's at will. Things are happening due to their cosmic condition. So then there is, if things are happening due to cosmic condition, the suffering is due to cosmic condition, happiness is due to cosmic condition. So it means happiness follows its own cosmic condition, suffering follows its own cosmic condition. So that by ending the cosmic condition which produced the suffering, you can experience, end of suffering. So,
and those teachings are the Dharma.
So yes, that teaching is Dharma. So it is Dharma teaching, and Dharma teaching, right now, and then in a foreign country, people say Dharma teaching. In the Indian traditionally, so in the language they use is darshana. So darshana means darshan is related to the drisht, seeing, how to see things. So in the Indian language, not at the time, they all call darshana. So it's giving you the idea of how to see things. It's giving you the view to see things in a different way. So right now we all this says and the is Dharma teachings. And then most of the time people understand that the teaching is Buddhist teachings. So Buddhist teaching, and that teaching has no specific meaning. It is like almost the educations, all the informations, the telling the stories, all teachings. Right? So according to the language they used at the time, teaching is darshana. Drish is seeing. So it here is giving you the eye to see things. So that is the darshan. I came here, all the time they says, I came to you to, receive darshan. So I want you to give me the eye to see things. So because my eye is not really doing well, so I want new eye test. It's kind of
so,
yeah. Huh?
So when we say I go for refuge to the Dharma, what does it mean exactly?
So I go for refuge to the Dharma means now. It's very literally the same in Sanskrit. Dharmam sharanam gacchami. Sharanams mean I surrender, or I go for refuge to the Dharma. So which means the treating is not talking about physically or mentally totally surrendering to anyone who can, kind of someone who is giving you the order or commanding. Here is saying, I'm totally submitted to that end of suffering. I'm totally, bowing to that end of suffering, which means I, deep in my genuine desire to attain that end of the suffering. So dharmam sharanam gacchamis, in the Pali, the Dhamma, right? The Dhamma sharanam gacchamis. So I think that's I go for refuge to the Dharma means, I have, refuge to the end of suffering. So I think this is a little bit different from the culturally refugee idea of the meaning of the refuge. You're afraid something, therefore you go to get the protections. So you are, disappointed, annoyed, or a little bit, upset by the condition in the present conditions. Now you also see there is something, the end of the suffering. So I want to attain that end of suffering. I want the cessation of the suffering. So and the stanzas number 11 is in the Tonchula Nyangandes. So, so Nirvana is found in that, direct realizations of the cessations. So Nirvana is experience or the actualized or taste within, the cessation of the suffering. And then it says that very thing is, completing the task. So the task is completed at the time. When you experience the nirvana in that very cessation of the suffering. So that is called completing the task. Now you have no desire to become something, to gain something. So I have perfectly experienced, the permanent state of peace. So completing the task at the time. So maybe you can imagine or picture when you read this. So in this text, in English translation says, that is immediate nirvana, and that very thing is attaining goal. Actually, it's kind of like, nirvana that nirvana is found, or nirvana in experience in the cessation of the suffering. So that very thing is completing the task. And then after this, if after that insight into the truth, one discovers anything particular here. Today's German translation says, this is the transcendence of sorrow in this very life, and one's task is complete if after the knowledge of the truth, differentiations occur here. So it's kind of like saying that, when you experience the nirvana, sense total freedom from the afflictive emotion, the cause of suffering, in that, the cessation, the nirvana that while you are in meditating emptiness. So that very thing is completing the task. And then says, if there is something as a cause, arising, or the distractions, or anything, the good or bad, virtue and non-virtue, if there is something, can you really see in that emptiness? So which means, when you totally meditative equipoise in that emptiness, you can experience nirvana, but you don't have any, any concept, any conventional reality of virtue, non-virtue, arising of the destructions or cause of the effect. All of them that, all of them had, right now we have, when we think of that cause and effect, cause is its own identity, and effect is its own identity. It is, remain different from each other. So that the way you see, way you picture them, cause and effect as something different, is because you give them intrinsic property. Therefore, you see them as a different thing. So that kind of different, intrinsic property is totally non-existing, dissolves in that, realization emptiness. So the meaning of things that you, things that identified in your mind, in your mental consciousness, and totally dissolve, when you directly experience emptiness. So I think that the implying that right now, when you think about cause and effect, cause and effect, seed and sprout, you're something like, like apple and orange, horse and cow. It's something, intrinsically, identified and separate unit. That kind of imagination, that kind of appearance, that kind of, the objectified is totally dissolved when you directly realize emptiness. So this is kind of, said, if after the insight into truth, one discover any particular here, it's questioning, So can you really think once the individual, you have directly, experienced the emptiness, can you still see, it, cause, effect, seed and sprout, the 12 links and dependent originations, all of them really kind of, has some kind of objectified phenomena. So Buddha Palita in his book this also mentioned that right now we see things, cause and effect. So when we think about 12 links of dependent origins, from the ignorance there's the karma, from the karma there's the consciousness, name and form. So we just continuously, by verbally expressing at the same time, we picture, each one by one as a one objective phenomena. So this kind of, it is almost like from the noble point of view, from the noble wisdom, and this is like you're making a knot tie in the space. You're tying knot in the space. So because from the noble wisdom, from the point of view of the noble wisdom, those knots that you thought you have tied up in the space, from the noble sees, there's nothing there. But we see things. Our mind sees when we say impermanence, we see another picture. Products, we see another project. So when it says conditional, that is also another thing. So if someone who understands impermanent is product is impermanent is conditional, Then it says, so before I have pictured them separately, they all belongs to, their own, category or their own property. Now, when you see it is impermanent, is the product, is the conditional, and there is no separate thing. So only remains separate is verbal. You can express impermanent that the speech is not expressing is a product. When you say product, it is expressed product, not impermanent. Oh, that is the only difference. So the meaning, the essence is the same thing.
Yeah, that is the limitation of language, but at the same time it's necessary that we are working with concepts. In some way it is to freeze reality, but otherwise wouldn't be able to say anything about what it is in front of, what it is the happening, that it is all the time in movement. So I think we believe that the words, they are like a mirror of something outside, and not just like a how to say, like a picture of something that it is happening, and we think that to be able to communicate with other people, but there it is when we make them like solid. We think that the language it is like a mirror of the red color of the whatever, the house, the table, and we forget that it is the opposite. Yeah. That it is just a way to transmit to the other or to yourself what you are experiences, to give a name,
So I think, and also the scientific field that people measures, differently, like particles, atoms, molecules, and even the form is now more solid and solid. So then says they says the atoms is the particle, the electron. So this is electron is particles. And why? Because it detects the particle. It detects as a particle. So therefore, it is particle. And then says, if you really, try to measure the electron itself, electron has, no measurement. It has no any objective form. So if there is no objective form, there is no measuring. And there's no measuring, there cannot be particle. So it's a subjective relation when it detects as a particle, and that does not mean it is the particles. Right. So, and then also maybe, right now you have detected or you understand is electron, maybe it can play positive in some relation. So that is also possible, Now it is playing as a positive with relation to something, maybe it can relation to something else, it is neutral. Right? So you cannot say, because verbally we separate electron, positive, neutron, therefore, they are like, totally independent, independent in the form.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like saying with relation to the subject, you can, you can identify something. Without relation to anything, nothing can be found in existence. Right. So relatively, things could exist. Without relation, nothing exists. No good things, no bad things, So no color, no sound, no smell, no taste, no separations of color, smell, taste, textures of one single breath. So without relations, that is impossible. With relation to different subject, you can separate the object. Right. So I think this is kind of very I always mention that one single candy, its color, smell, taste, textures, with language is separate. So that separation of that is not, by the nature of the candy itself. It is separation is with relation to the different subject. For the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, therefore it seems is separate. So it detect with detections of the different sense faculty, it's separated. It is not separate by the nature of the candy. So in the language, yes, it is separate, right? The color of the candy, the taste of the candy, smell of the candy, and the textures of the candy. We say, they're separate. So this, how do they remain separate? And we say, yes, they do remain separate. And do they remain separate within the candy? So within the candy, within the one single candy, if they remain separate, they have to, remain separate location. So they are not remaining separate within the candy. They are not remain separately in the location, and they are separate because it seems separate from the detectors of the eye consciousness, A consciousness, nose consciousness. Is it detected separately? Therefore, it's known as separate. It looks like separate. It's seemingly it is separate. It's kind of like the separations of the color, smell, taste, textures. The one single candy is as a facsimulated. It is a fake. It is fake, right? So it's almost like the one woman, detected, from the child is mother, detected from the husband is a wife, detected her mother as a daughter. So do you think, are these you have in your house? Do you have the, 3 women or 4 women in your house? Because the child says, that's my mother, it's not a wife. And husband says, this is my wife, not a daughter. Mother says daughter. So there is the separations is there because it's detected by the different subject. So you have a reason to say, with one woman, the mother, wife, daughter is separate. But the separations is never really true out there. And the separation is due to the subject. So that's why it's unreal. It's unreal, but it accepted to be existing, because it can be proven existing with relation. Separation is unreal, but it is proven to be existing with relation to, the son and husband and the mother. So when you say it's a real, unreal, if you say it's the real, the separation is the real, and where is it? So there is no real things, but is relatively understood to be existing. So now they're saying that, for the ordinary people, when we express, when we imagine, color, smell, taste, textures, mother, wife, daughter. So, verbally, I kind of, identifying in the single unit, separately. So as the language is separating, identifying in separate unit, and that means our mind is also following the language. We also imagine these are separate property. So because of that, you have mentally identified a separate object, and you also objectified at the same time. So now this kind of objectivity remaining separate, when you meditate, when you kind of directly experience the emptiness, this whole imagination, whole idea of that separation will dissolve within emptiness. So the one who has attained nirvana don't see that as we picture, because all of these are, a mistake, is unreal. So yeah, so in the commentary, Chandrakirti commentary is saying, in this very life, when the yogi and yoginis attain intuition wisdoms, which does not perceive any real things, that reality is immediate nirvana. So, sometimes I find very unfortunate, That reality is immediate nirvana. If there is, maybe you can say, the yogi and yogini attain intuition wisdoms, yogi or yoginis, noble beings who attained noble wisdoms, direct realization emptiness. So from the point of view of the wisdom realizing emptiness, perceives, not perceiving any real thing. There is no such thing as cause, effect, arising of the destructions. Anything that is the real that sees is emptiness or nirvana. That is the only thing that can, they have directly experienced. And just the attainment of that goal is precisely what is referred to as attaining goal. So when your mind is totally, observing in the emptiness, at that time you experience the freedom from the cause of suffering. This is the only real that you see. Other than that, conventional reality, it is not an object at the time, not a real at the time. And then says that, this is that nature, that very condition is called completing the task. So you can also interpret that, what makes us, what is giving us tasks, that you think that I have to do so many things. I will do that thing, I will do that thing, I have to do it in this month and next month. Complete, it has a non-stop. The task is keep coming to you, So something that you are not happy with this thing, something that you are not satisfied with this thing. So you think, oh, maybe there's a better one, there's a better one, there's a better one. You're finding the better one all the time. So you haven't, you're not going, you're never finished with, any task. The task is keep coming. Because everything that you imagine, it is something objective, something solid, So the Arhat. So in the Sanskrit word, they use Arahat, In the Pali language, the Arahan. So it's kind of, the Pali is the more feminist like word, Arahat, and it's Arahan. So that's the in the completing the task, attaining the goal. It has the precise occasions of the arisal of the wisdom that does not precede creations or the cessation should be known as the immediate nirvana. So the occasions of the moment you are meditating in the emptiness, at the same time you attain nirvana, your mind is not going to imagine or perceive anything that is conventionally existing as arising and the destructions. There's no virtues and non-virtues as a, different object, separate object. So thus, in the scriptures, when it says in the Buddha, saying that, in the scriptures, in the sutra, it says, monks, so the Gyalothas, the bhikshus, having attained immediate nirvana, the noble scriptures, noble Shariputras taught, Shariputra, right? Taught this discover. So you should recognize that to be immediate nirvana in this life, hence the statement, life is over.
Just keep using the word immediate. Is it something more direct?
Yeah, and the Tsuddha translates within this life. So he was translating immediate. So Tongwa means, while you are seeing or while you, the directly perceiving the cessation of the suffering. So that's kind of, he was using this immediate, while you are. Yeah, this English translation is, I'm not sure. Life is over. So now it says, in the Shariputra, when he attained nirvana, so in the Arhat expressed when they attain nirvana, they says, now the birth is exhausted. The birth the birth in second existence is done now. And the pure life has been led. So in these little different languages, and English science is a very simple, language they use. Pure life has been led. In Tibetan we call that you are trying to be pure. That whole effort to be pure is now you have no need. Your attempt to be pure is is done. So in the Tibetan translated translate literally from the Sanskrit. So we say Samsara. In the India, in the Sanskrit language, they said Aham Brahmins. So Aham Brahmins means, and some they use like very arrogantly, Aham Brahmins. Now I have I've gained knowledge in the universal. So some people they says so some they interpret that even in Sanskrit, Aham Brahmins means now I see myself, completely interconnected with whole existing. So Aham Brahmins. Some the Hindu they says Aham Brahmins is like now I am equal with Brahma. So there's a language has no it's very very like sometimes language is like politicians, you can buy here and there and everywhere. So Aham Brahmins means now I can see myself, interconnected with every existing. So now they're saying that Aham Brahmins is you've been trying to be pure, you've been trying to be, attain something, all the attemptment, right? All the effort, all these actions, the tasks, they're trying to be something, trying to purify something, trying to attain something, reach something. Now that, that whole effort is now complete. That mission is complete. So the Tibetan we translate from the Sanskrit literally Tsangpa Nyendo. Sometimes Tsangpa is used the real Lord Brahma. Sometimes Tsangpa is something higher states. Is Tsangpa. So so pure life has been led. The goal has been reached. And I will now, I will know no other life beyond this. So this is what the Arhat says. My birth is exhausted, and my attempt to pure or my attempt to be rich something is done. My goal has been achieved. And now I know there is no further, birth of me in samsara. I see there is no future birth. So that is the realizations of the uncreatedness, seedness, yeah. Cessateness of the relativities. So now this is saying, uncreatedness means kewameva, the unarising, the objective, the unarising is seen, or intrinsically absence of arising is seeing. So when you say the seeing, tomo, so means I have experience. So that reminds me one of the sutras, that sutra that question answer with, the old lady, I think 80-year-old lady who came to Buddha, and she asked very profound questions to the Buddha, and after, done with this question and answers, and she said, before, when I come to the Buddha, I have a feeling, I have a thought. I am old, I am poor. Now that thought is gone. She said, now that is totally disappears. When she come to the Buddha, she thought that, oh, I am very old, I am very poor, So when she kind of do the discussions with the Buddha, and even that really kind of, stunned. Even the Ananda was stunned by her questions. And then Ananda asked, who's this old lady? She has asked very profound questions. Buddha says, this is the, lady that, many lives in my previous life, she has played as my mother for 500 lives. This woman came to her, So kind of, that this kind of, something that is, what do you call it? The thought of being poor, thought of being, lower, thought of being, something that missing you feeling. So that whole kind of thought is due to some kind of misunderstandings. So the old lady, she, after the discussion, she says, now, so thought of being old and poor is totally disappears in my mind. She was very satisfied, happy. So the suffering is actually the suffering, or experiencing suffering with, experience is suffering with, something comes in your mind, some what do you call it? The object, some kind of, some imaginations, some characteristics, with that, the suffering that comes in your mind, saying that those objects will disappear in emptiness at the time, and the suffering also be gone, totally disappears in the space. So, moreover, the questioning this, the first step.
Geshe,
Yeah.
when you say disappear in space, what do you mean in space?
Because the condition, with some object you are not happy. So you are not, without, it's not like just by breathing you are not happy. It's not like that. Something happens in your mind. Something occurs in your mind. Something that you drawn pictures in your mind. Therefore you are not happy. So the emptiness is, emptiness, the intrinsic property, by emptying the intrinsic property, all these mental superimposition on the objects disappears. Disappears means it is, is not dropped somewhere. It disappears in space because it never exists there.
It never existed.
Yeah, it never exists, but you just superimpose in your mind.
Yeah.
So when you realize there is no intrinsic property, and this object will disappear in emptiness. So when with object you are not happy, that object disappears, and the feeling of unhappy is also disappears within that emptiness. So moreover, the questioning this, the forsakes precisely this characteristic of non-perceiving the creation and cessation of the relativities. For if one imagines that things as perceived have some sort of intrinsically identifiable objectivities, since these things would be mutually distinct entity, as I mentioned earlier, when the language constructs, construct the color, smell, taste, textures that are, mutually distinct from each other. Something that is each has its own identity in a single unit that is distinct from, color that distinct from the smell that distinct from the colors. That, all of them remain, identifiable object. They are not, they are not really related. They are independent object. So, that's kind of saying the mutually distinct entities being ascertained as such, they would necessarily be determinable only as individuals, particulars. For in such a view, one cannot determine actuality of things through the knowing some other actuality, just as one cannot determine the color yellow by knowing something blue. So now they're saying that when you are, what happens in the Arhat minds when they are totally absorbing in emptiness? Their mind is totally, convinced and inseparable with absence of intrinsic property. Why they do not perceive arising as the distincted, intrinsic property. Distractions is the, another, intrinsic property that is arising, and the distractions are mutually distincted, mutually different, different from each other. So why an Arhat mind, don't see that? What happens in Arhat's mind? Like when we think, like with one single candy, when we think color of that, smell of that, taste of that, texture of that. So for us, when we say the color, smell, taste, textures, the color you see with eye, smell from nose, taste from the tongue, the texture from the body or touch. So because of that, we, in our mind, we think. So whenever we say the color, smell, taste, we think they're all distincted from each others. Right? So why the Arhat mind, why they don't see it? Because their mind is, for example, saying that when you focus on the yellow and you are totally paying attention to the yellow color, and maybe there is blue around that, you don't notice that. So similarly, Arhat's mind is totally convinced with absence of intrinsic existence. So this kind of intrinsic property of the separations is not comes to their mind. So which also means when you have totally observing an emptiness, when you're totally convinced with emptiness, your mind is inseparable with that. There is no space in your mind to impose or superimpose anything that exists as arising the distinct from the destruction, anything that destructions that is distinct from arising. In your mind, there is no space to follow any superimposition. So that's why, them, because of their mind, that deep understanding of emptiness, and they don't have any condition to be not happy, to be, dissatisfied. So I think that pretty much, that implying that in what conditions we are, why we often not happy. So is it something with, is it the reason? Is the color is the reason, or the sound is the reason? Smell is the reason? We say yes. Color is the reason that I'm not happy. Sound is the reason that I'm not happy. Actually, you are not happy with your own mental projections. So when your mind kind of attach or grasping on mental projections, superimposition of intrinsic property of things. So that's the reasons. You think, if you're not happy, so reason of the not happy is always with you. Because your mind is not kind of, not letting it go. You pointed, this is the reason I'm not happy, and your mind don't want to let it go. So this is something like you want happy all the time, but you find this is the reason I'm not happy, and your mind says, I don't want to let it go. So Arhat, so, Arhat's minds, because of their strong, powerful, the wisdoms that is, like, it's almost like a flame that, whole consciousness, whole element, occupied or, hijacked in every existing of their, their parts. And there is no space to grasp any superimpositional. There is no space in mind to superimpose. So that is the reason, they are in the permanent state of peace. Yeah, I think it makes sense. So sometimes with the anger, when you just generally when you think, when you are angry with something or someone, so the anger says, I don't want to let go of that image, of that person, or that condition, or that event. But, your mind says, I'm not happy with this image. And your anger says, I'm not going to let it go. So you also, you also think that anger is your protection. So anger is protecting your right. But anger says, I don't want to let you go. This is my favorite entertainment. And your mind says, that image, because of this, I'm not happy. So this, from that you can see your mind is, one of the like a long-lasting Pandora box. So it's not only this life, this continuous habituations is coming in the next life too. That same habit. So the same thing, attachment and jealousy is like that. Attachment and jealousy is attracted to that object, and you are not happy because of that object. So the Arya Deva, in the Arya Deva's text, there's a line, and it comes with picture. So there's a picture. Arya Deva said of the picture. There's one person. There's a picture. The person is hanging on a tree branch, and he is, underneath there is crocodiles and like many, predators, underneath him. He was holding on the tree branch, and he was there, chased by the elephant is also standing there. And then only thing that he can distracted from this is from the top of the tree. There's the one honey bee nest, bee hives. From there's one single honey drops in his mouth. So that is the reason he could not think to get freedom. Because the taste of that honey is the reason he cannot think of any freedom. But he also sees that everything, everywhere, there is many cosmic conditions, brings the suffering, but he cannot think of freedom because he was attracted. He was attached and attracted to the taste of that honey drops in his mouth. So that is the samsara. So because I think most of the samsaric people, they witness the suffering, they witness the cosmic condition which caused the suffering. They all know. But still, their mind is always, so going after or imagining, attracted to things that cause more suffering. Because your anger is attracted to the negative image. Your attachment is attached to the favorable, the attractiveness of mental image. So this kind of, very called paradox. It's a big paradox.
Yeah.
So now this is saying that if you empty the intrinsic property of all phenomena, and this whole reason, or this whole condition, whole imaginations which brings the suffering will disappear. Because when you empty the intrinsic property of the things, and in that absence, then you cannot, attract it to any kind of intrinsic, objectivities. Yeah. So you say, like from the beginning, as I said, Yadama hit Brahma, hit Tishan Tathagatos. Everything is, happening, good or bad, due to cosmic conditions. And there is the way to end things that you do not want by ending their cosmic conditions. That is also taught by the Tathagata, Buddha. No questions? Chanju Semjo Rinpoche, Maje Bana, Geshe, Geba Nyamba, Mebanya, Kone Kondo Pevers, Ponye Tawa Rinpoche, Maje Bana, Geshe, Geba Nyamba, Mebanya, Kone Kondo Pevers, Pama Simjen Tamje, Dedan Tenju, Nyandro Tamje, Tado Kong, Chanju Semba Kana Sushu, Tadagunji, Molam Jubju, Karera Yoga Vishimazu, Penda Dewa Manu Jungene, Jeren Song, Dinzin Jazu, Shabe Sute Batu Denju.
May the precious body mind not yet born arise and grow. May the bone have no decline but increase forevermore. May the precious mind realizing emptiness not yet born arise and grow. May the bone have no decline but increase forevermore. Due to all these merits, may all father and mother sentient beings have all the happiness, and may all lower realms be empty forever. Wherever there are bodhisattvas, may all their prayers be accomplished immediately. In the sacred land surrounded by snow mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness, O powerful Trinity Tenzin Gyatso. Remain in this world until samsara ends.
Thank you much.